Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Drum Talk. Today is really awesome. We have a good friend of mine on the show, Tyler Smyth, who was actually a protege of mine for a few years, and now he's moved out to LA. He's the lead vocalist of Danger Kids and a producer engineer based in LA. And you were telling us a little bit earlier that you've been working with Falling in Reverse, which is very interesting. But the thing that was so cool that I thought is you told me that you're using Drumforge on the new Danger Kids record, which we now know as the Blacklist.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and that process.
Yeah, totally. So like a lot of this comes from, I think it all comes from everyone's. I think most people that are home studio like enthusiasts or whatever sort of all stem from the same place. Like they want to be creative. They don't have the means to a big studio or whatever. And so my band, Danger Kids, I guess when you're sort of in the industry and it's a record label that's cutting your check so you can work with a producer, it can kind of like hang things up if you're waiting on that type of stuff. And I had just sort of learned to record over the years, and so rather than wait for our check to come in or whatever, I was just like, I'm just going to write some songs. And that ended up becoming a finished album. And so when I was sitting down and I was going through things, I do a lot of program stuff. I program drums, and because I don't really have the means to record at a studio or anything. I mean, I guess I could go rent a room or something. But what I actually did was cool. I sampled Katie's kit, and I even sampled her cymbals, and man, they were awful. And so I had Drumforge. I was so excited to use it, and I instantly found it to be like the most breathing like overheads ever. And to me, especially when I'm working with programmed drums, I think my biggest thing I'm fighting is the realism. Like I think a kick and a snare is fine, but I think a lot of life comes from overheads. And I have so many overhead samples, and I can say without a doubt that like the Drumforge ones are my favorite. They're just really balanced and really I don't know, they just make it feel alive. You know what I mean? And I a lot of people think like there's an old saying or whatever that like American rock is from the kick drum and British rock's from the hi-hat, and I have always found that like the more rock and I want something to be, the more loud and in your face and aggressive the cymbals have to be. And like with Drumforge, I felt like I had every balance. I felt like I had loud in your face, like I don't know if you listen to like those old Killers albums, it's like cymbals just, it's so sizzly and bright and something really airy and awesome about the whole thing. It feels live, and I found that same vibe, I don't know, walked the balance perfectly for me with Blacklist, which is funny because I really always picture my band as sort of like hyper-produced, maybe even over-produced, but I think having those cymbals and maybe I think I actually blended the snare too. I think one of the snares, I would have to open it up. It's been a couple months, but dude, I don't know, man. Drumforge was awesome. It was great working with it, and it brought a lot of life to my drums. And this is like in a world where everyone is using like, you know, Slate and like, I don't know, Pod Farm and Zombase and all that stuff. And it's like all that stuff is great and it works really well. But I didn't want to sound like everyone else. I wanted something that, I don't know, was less of like you go to Guitar Center and buy it off the shelf, and then you sound like that.
Now you sound like everyone who bought it off the shelf.
Yeah, and it is great. I mean, those products are popular because they're great and they work, but I was really actively pursuing not sounding like another record or another band. I mean, down to like the vocal mic I used, and like I found a guy online who basically made my vocal mic. Like he buys like cheap Chinese mics, and then like you just tell him what you want and like what mic you want him to model it after, and he like rewires it. And I think most studio people are like that though. You know, they have a guitar that's like one of a kind, and they have this amp that just sounds just like this. No one else can get it. And I think I wanted my microscopic version of that, you know, because I felt like if I base my product on tools that not everyone's using, I'm inevitably going to end up with something special and unique. And for me, it's really interesting because it was Drumforge like 100%. Like all the cymbals on the whole record, on every song, are Drumforge. And I sampled cymbals, man. Like I went through all this trouble, and I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot, and they were awful, and I wouldn't wish them upon like my worst enemy. But like yeah, but the Drumforge stuff was great. It just really brings a lot of life to the mix.
Let's talk a little bit about mixing drums because you get the Drumforge samples. They come to you mixed. You can unmix them essentially by using the raw version or whatever. But like you said, you didn't necessarily use Drumforge for everything. So let's talk about how you approach drum mixing in general. Like for
Okay.
example, if you're completely in the box and you're using other samples or you're blending samples together, what's sort of like your technique and what kind of processing are you using on those?
Okay, sure. I think that there's a lot of common knowledge tools that are extremely powerful if used correctly, like that everyone's aware of. My toolkit, especially with drums, which I'm pretty confident in my drum mixing abilities, EQ, compression, clipping, and clipping is interesting too because I think that I think that the old school mentality is that it's sort of like a destructive process or something. Like I feel like there's a lot of purists that are like, why would you do that? Like that's how it sounds, and it's funny because to me it's like a color. It's like to me clipping and EQ are the same thing. You're just shaping something so it sounds a certain way. You know what I mean? It's like putting gel in your hair or something. Like I don't understand so you'll like EQ something, but you feel like auto-tune is wrong or something. To me, that's really silly. It's like a tool and it's at your disposal. And I don't know. I'm just not I'm if the tool's there and it works great, I'm going to use it. And for me, I get a huge part of my sound out of clipping. My EQ is really subtle, honestly, on drums, unless I'm like doing subtractive EQ or cutting like something. Like sometimes I'll cut like ring out of a snare or I'll even sometimes pitch things so that they're, tuned to the song. And I mean, all of those things you could argue are destructive, especially since I'm doing it in the digital realm and not in the analog, like tuning the drum realm. But the end product is always the same for me. It's like a really great drum sound that is like resonating in the key of the song. And so, I don't know. It's if you want a big, loud, in-your-face drum kit that is not going to cause problems later, you gotta cut and you gotta compress subtly and tastefully, and you need, in my opinion, to clip really, really properly. Not so much that it sounds bad, but so much that you're left with a balanced, just huge, beautiful drum kit that isn't just good sounding by itself, but it's good sounding in the full mix because there's a lot more to come after drums.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, is getting it big and loud, because with the loudness wars going on, everything has started to get really hard to fit in that tiny space. So getting your drums to come and pop out is really important, and clipping helps that.
Isn't that cool though? It's like the loudness wars is one argument, but I think that there's a whole like art in it too. Like I don't want to sound too. This is the only example I can think of, but like I have a bachelor's degree in English, and you study a lot of things, but in poetry writing, there's like structured poetry and unstructured poetry, and I've always been a fan of structured things. I think that's why I like writing songs so much, but it's like, how creative can you be in this set of restrictions? Like unstructured is free, do whatever you want, and I think there's that recording method as well, but I'm always fascinated by, like Joey, like I'll listen to something Joey puts out, and I'm just like, there is such an art in getting everything so loud. Like I'm always like, how can I hear, like with me, I sometimes I'm like, at the end of the day, you have to pick a few things that are really in your face, and I listen to other producers, and I'll be like, how does Joey's drums get so loud, but his guitars are so loud, but the vocals are so loud, like it's all there, like you can hear everything, and it's just like, it pisses me off, but the truth is...
Lots of clipping in L1.
Right, there's an art to it, man, there's a balance. It's like, it's like EQ. It's like the people that can just, their ears are so in tune, and they have such an intimate understanding of their DAW and their plugins. You can do anything. I mean, that's what makes the home studio so awesome these days, I think.
Yeah, we are kind of currently in this, like, I think, drum processing, sort of drum clipping revolution right now, where like we said, the loudness wars are there. Everything's kind of fighting for space. Everything's fighting for loudness. And clipping has kind of allowed us to do that with drums to a point where we're not destroying the transients. We're not using transient designers per se, and we can keep the soul of the drum sound, but increase its loudness level and kind of keep the dynamic range there intact without destroying it while making it loud. And I know we've given you DF Clip, and have you had a chance to kind of play around with that?
Yeah, I have. I have a few questions. It's so cool. I've just never used anything like it. Like the tilt feature is so awesome, and I want to. I know you'll never tell me the inner workings of it, but I want to know so bad what's going on because it's like this magic knob, and I love it.
Real simple.
It's
do you know what a band axial EQ curve is?
Yes, I believe.
It's a very musical curve without getting dirty, but basically it's centered at like 700 hertz, and it's kind of like a seesaw. It goes like this, so you can go brighter or darker, and it always sounds very musical.
And like going warm is so cool on it. It doesn't sound like just a low pass. You know what I mean? It's like very, like you said, musical. It's very musical sounding, and I feel like I need to put that on. I feel like that musical warmth, I don't know, if you can, especially in the digital realm, get rid of a lot of those brittly sounds, like you end up with something like that sounds breathing. And I instantly, even last night, I was actually putting it on this like little, like I guess EDM type thing I was just making for fun, and I was like putting it on fully electronic like kick snares and all that stuff, and I would put it on like the whole bus, and it just, I don't know, it was super fun to play with and insanely powerful. And clipping is like so, I clip at so many points in my mix, it's silly, and I almost sometimes wonder if that's one of the things that separates me from other people's mixes, like why mine are maybe stronger in some areas, is just because I think that at first people are worried to do it, because if you like trust your eyes, you see the transients disappearing, but if you just listen to your ears, it's done tastefully and subtly. It's like insanely musical. But yeah, that tilt feature is super cool. Never used anything like that.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
I love clipping. It's kind of like it just makes drums sound better to me in like a aggressive way. Like anything that makes it sound louder but like more in your face. I started clipping like 2 years ago. Joey actually turned me on to it. Now that I do it, like I'm addicted. I'll clip it as loud as I can take it.
I remember like back in the day, like Joey showing me little things like that, and I was like, what? And like I was like, you put like G-clip on this thing? I mean, this is like years ago, and to me, I was like, why would you do that to that? It's like destroying the sound. And to me, it's like, the limiter only ever goes on the master. Like that's only because you have to. Like why would you do that somewhere else? And it's so funny how much of a like that. I think I was too approaching it like I just wasn't using my ears, and I think using your ears is everything. And like you said, you clip drums and they sound bigger, but they don't sound worse. Like you listen for yourself. If they sound worse, you're clearly going too far or doing something wrong. But the clipping process, clipping is the new EQ. It's like the new compression, because it's a tool that can be used on almost anything. I mean, mostly things that are very percussive, like drums work great. But even like you can even get really cool, not even as an effect, but like, I mean, obviously you can go the effector, you can crush something and it gives it that unique sound. But it's funny because I think that only the new wave producers are the people that embrace that. I think that even some of the old school people might not realize how much clipping is going on in their like big analog boards and stuff. Like they pay big money for those transistors to distort and have that certain sound. Like how is that any, more or less destructive than clipping your drums or your snare? Yeah. To me, that's silly.
Very good point. Tyler, it's been great to have you on the show. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us and talk about drums and stuff.
Yeah.
And, this is your opportunity to kind of plug something, whatever you're doing, maybe Danger Kids, whatever. Let people know where they can find you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks for watching everything, guys. I'm Tyler. I do vocals in Danger Kids. I'm also like an LA-based producer, and I just want to say thanks for watching, and if you have time, check out my band, Danger Kids. Just Google it. It's one word. And we have a new album that's going to be coming out in just a couple months, and we're going to be posting a bunch of songs before then, and I'm going to be shooting some videos, or they'll probably be done by the time this airs. But check those out, and make sure you check out Blacklist, our new album. Appreciate it.